unsportsmanlike.
The Ravens have backed out of their trade agreement for defensive end Maxx Crosby.
Maxx Crosby is a known commodity with a known injury. Clearly, something happened.
They are on their heels with a capital H, and here's why. Everyone's going to know that they got to trade him. So if I'm fill in the blank, Indy, Chicago, to me, even Dallas with Rashard.
United States loses to Italy in the World Baseball Classic, so they could potentially be eliminated today, and wild things going on. But free agency news brought to us by ZipRecruiter. Try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/USL. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. So last night, out of nowhere,
So out of nowhere that when it came through on our group chat, I had to triple check it.
Well, it's so out of nowhere that multiple people on the group chat did not believe it was real.
The graphic didn't look real. The graphic
did not.
looked fake.
So the Raiders put out a tweet that read the following way. The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time. Courtney Cronin, you cover the NFL for a living on a regular daily basis. What happened here? What did the Ravens find that made them back out?
They didn't find anything. They already had this information about Maxx Crosby, the meniscus, the information that everybody around the NFL had, that this guy was getting a procedure done in the offseason on his knee, which was injured at the end of last year, thus why he was shut down for the last couple games in Vegas. Everybody knew that this was going to happen. So when they do their physical, they already have most of the information that they need to know. Otherwise, you don't end up making that trade in the first place. What happened here, and I think that we can all read between the lines, is that the Ravens got cold feet with the 2 first-round picks that they ended up giving up for Maxx Crosby, including number 14 this year. And it may seem like a loophole, it may seem shady, but it's technically within their right for their doctors to not sign off on something if they started having second thoughts about this trade and whether it was worth the price in which they were paying. So the reporting that comes out last night from Adam Schefter and others is that he failed the physical. So he goes to Baltimore before he can sign today, 4 p.m. when it becomes finalized. He has to go through a physical. This process goes down. We find Maxx Crosby via Instagram on a plane, seemingly going back to Las Vegas, to where he reverts back to their roster now. And there is a whole domino effect that's going to come out of this, because the last 2 days they've been one of the busiest teams in free agency, getting all these new players because they expected Maxx Crosby to not be on their roster. So in the process now of having to scramble to figure out who they can keep, who they have to now let go of and let other teams get involved with before free agency officially starts. In the process of that, they also lost $30 million in cap space because Maxx Crosby reverted back to their roster. I've never seen a mess like this. I've covered one of the recent trades that was negated because of a failed physical. Everybody remembers the great P.J. Hall trade of 2020 in Minnesota.
Still talking about it.
Kidding, no one remembers it. But it's so rare that something like this happens with a player of this caliber, and I think it really points to the fact that the Ravens now are going to be looked at by 31 other teams as, can we actually do business with you? Because you going within your right to now negate a trade because you say your doctors aren't comfortable signing off on this and their tolerance of risk. This is going to, the domino effect that comes off of this is pretty significant, and I'm really curious to see over the next 12 hours what happens.
So, Court, I just want to follow up on one thing quickly, just for the sake of clarity and to make this statement. You don't believe the Ravens are backing out of this trade for health-related reasons?
No, I do not. I do think that 32 teams have 32 medical staffs that have different tolerances for risk. However, when you think about when the trade was going down on Friday and all of the information that teams have to gather, like when teams hit free agency, it isn't just like the day that they make a trade, they decide, everybody in a room, okay, Maxx Crosby, that's the guy we want, let's go in and get him. Like, they have free agency meetings for weeks leading into the combine, because they have to set their board of priorities for free agency and then priorities for the draft. So what we've learned here And in hearing from Dr. Neil Elatrosh, his surgeon, who Adam Schefter has a quote from today, which speaks to where Maxx Crosby will be at the start of next season. His agent came out and said that he's going to be healthy. He expects him to go back to being as dominant of a player as he's ever been. But every time that deals like this are made, doctors, PT people, agents, all of this, they know exactly where they are in the rehab process, before you strike the deal. They knew all of this stuff beforehand, but now that they had a chance to put their hands physically on Maxx Crosby and get and basically find a reason to veto the trade by saying, oh, wait, actually, we got a closer look at the knee. It doesn't look as good as we thought, even though they knew he wouldn't be ready at this point of the offseason and then going into the preseason. I think it's a conveniently timed excuse to be able to back out of a deal that they were getting roasted for, because 2 first-round picks for a non-quarterback in this climate is a lot.
It is a lot, but this is a team that needs a big swing. They need to get to a certain place. You move on from a legendary coach like John Harbaugh because what had been happening in Baltimore was not good enough. You have to maximize the window that you have with a 2-time, could have been 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. And I know it was a steep price to pay for Maxx Crosby, but I also appreciated the Ravens going for it, for saying we're not going to just sit back and think that what we have is good enough. We are going to add an impact player like Maxx Crosby. And Courtney's right on so many things. And the domino effect, the residue that's going to come from this is so significant. What do the Ravens do now? Where do they pivot? How do they add to their team? To Courtney's point, how are teams going to approach doing business with the Ravens after this? She brought up the Raiders. They were big spenders on Monday. They had the most cap space in the league, and they were adding pieces left and right. Financially, how does that impact them? What happens with Maxx Crosby now? That's what's really interesting to me, is what is going to happen to his value after this? What teams are going to go after him? What does Vegas do with Maxx Crosby after this?
So all those follow-ups we're going to get to coming up, because there's so many aspects of this. Again, the Ravens backed out. We got to use the Raiders terminology here, because that's the only public statement from either team so far, right? And the player, Maxx Crosby, has not made a public statement to my knowledge yet, at least by way of his social media or anything like that. So again, the Ravens backed out of the Maxx Crosby trade. 2 first-rounders were going to the Raiders, who have used a lot of this cap space that they got from Crosby for other players. That doesn't mean that they can't get those other players, but do they have to change the agreement? We're going to get to that. Could Crosby get traded today, as Smalls mentioned? Also, if Trey Hendrickson had already agreed with another team, would all of this be happening? Just throwing that out there. There's so much to dive into. We will continue to do that coming up. But first, a lot of money going around in the NFL, which means a lot of tax.
Immediate impact on the Raiders, Mike T.
Yeah, Trevor, so basically what happens at 4 o'clock tomorrow East Coast time, the league year begins, and all of Maxx Crosby's 2026 salary counts on their cap, all $30 million. Now, I do think they'll have enough cap room to try to sign those other players that they reportedly reach agreement with. So that's Quay Walker, Kwity Paye, Nakobe Dean, Tyler Lindenbaum, amongst others. But every team also has a cash budget, and now all of a sudden they're going to need another $30 million. So it could impact their ability to sign those other players. And this gets fascinating. So could you imagine during the day tomorrow, the Ravens are well within their rights before 4 o'clock to actually try to re-sign someone like Tyler Lindenbaum?
And quite frankly, that's not a deadline. That's just technically when it all opens up. So we'll see what happens from there. Mike Tannenbaum, we appreciate